Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. The morning sun had barely risen as I stepped out of my tiny apartment, a spring in my step and a sense of purpose in my heart. Today was the day I'd been waiting for, the start of my new job at Unjustly Group. I had meticulously laid out my clothes the night before, ensuring everything was perfect for my first day. A freshly ironed shirt, a crisp tie, and polished shoes, all symbols of my readiness to embrace this new chapter in my life. I glanced at my watch. I had plenty of time to catch the train and arrive early for the new employee orientation. The station was bustling with the usual morning crowd, but I managed to find a spot near the platform's edge. As the train pulled in, I squeezed into the packed carriage and found a spot near the door. The ride was uneventful, and I spent the time mentally rehearsing my introduction speech, imagining myself confidently presenting to the room full of new colleagues. Lost in my thoughts, I almost missed my stop. I hurried off the train, joining the stream of commuters heading toward the station's exit. As I walked through the busy streets, my phone buzzed with a reminder of the orientation start time. I quickened my pace, not wanting to risk being late. The route to the company's building was familiar. I had walked it several times since receiving the job offer. But today, something felt different. An inexplicable sense of unease gnawed at me. I was about to cross a narrow alley when I heard a commotion. A woman's voice, panicked and desperate, echoed off the walls. "Let me go. Please stop." Instinctively, I halted and peered into the alley. Two men were struggling with a young woman, trying to force her into a waiting car. My heart pounded as I weighed my options. I could walk away and pretend I saw nothing, ensuring I made it to my orientation on time, or I could intervene and help her, risking everything I had worked so hard for. I made my decision in a split second. Dropping my briefcase, I sprinted into the alley. "Hey, leave her alone," I shouted, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. The men turned, their expressions twisted with annoyance. One of them, a burly guy with a scar across his cheek, sneered at me. "Mind your own business, hero." Ignoring the threat, I lunged at the scarred man, tackling him to the ground. The woman broke free from the other man's grip and stumbled backward. I grappled with the scarred man, trying to pin him down, but his accomplice kicked me hard in the ribs, sending me sprawling. The woman, regaining her composure, grabbed a nearby trash can lid and swung it at the second man, hitting him squarely in the face. He staggered back, cursing. I seized the opportunity to get back on my feet and threw a punch at the scarred man, connecting with his jaw. He groaned and fell to the ground, clutching his face. "Let's get out of here," the second man shouted, pulling his companion to his feet. They bolted down the alley, disappearing around the corner. I turned to the woman, who was breathing heavily but appeared unhurt. "Are you okay?" I asked, extending a hand to help her up. She nodded, her eyes wide with a mix of gratitude and shock. "Yes, thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." I glanced at my watch, realizing with a sinking feeling that the orientation had already started. "I'm glad you're safe," I said, trying to mask my anxiety. "Do you need me to call someone? The police?" She shook her head. "No, I'll be fine. My name's Emily. Emily Hunter." "I'm Ryan," I replied. "Ryan Summers." Emily looked at me with concern. "You're bleeding. Are you okay?" I touched my lip and winced as I felt the trickle of blood. "I'll be fine. It's just a scratch." "Thank you, Ryan. You really saved me." "Just doing what anyone would do," I said, trying to downplay my actions. "But I really need to get going. I'm late for my first day at work." Emily's eyes widened with realization. "Oh no, I've made you late. I'm so sorry." "Don't worry about it," I reassured her. "Your safety is more important." We exchanged contact information before parting ways. I hurried to Unjustly Group, my heart heavy with dread. I arrived at the office building, panting and disheveled. The receptionist glanced at me with a mixture of surprise and disapproval. "I'm Ryan Summers," I said, trying to catch my breath. "I'm here for the new employee orientation." She raised an eyebrow and picked up the phone. After a brief conversation, she directed me to Mr. Archer's office. I straightened my tie and tried to compose myself, but my mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Mr. Archer's office was as imposing as the man himself. He sat behind a large mahogany desk, his expression unreadable. Carter, the HR manager, stood to the side, looking sympathetic but helpless. "Mr. Summers," Archer began, his voice cold. "You're late." "I know, sir. He held up a hand to silence me. "I don't tolerate tardiness, especially on the first day. What's your excuse?" I took a deep breath and recounted the events in the alley, hoping he would understand. But as I spoke, his expression grew harder. "Do you expect me to believe such a ridiculous story?" he asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. "This isn't a comic book, Mr. Summers. This is a professional environment." "It's the truth," I insisted. I couldn't just ignore someone in need. Archer scoffed. "A trash who chooses a girl over the company isn't needed here. You're fired." My heart sank. "Please, sir, Leave," he ordered, turning his attention back to his papers. Carter stepped forward, looking conflicted. "Mr. Archer, maybe we show." "That's final," Archer snapped. "Now get out." As I stumbled out of his office, my world crumbling around me, I bumped into Carter, the HR manager. His sympathetic eyes met mine, and he pulled me aside into a quiet corner of the hallway. "Ryan, I heard what happened," he said gently. "I believe you, but Mr. Archer's decision is final. I'm really sorry." I nodded numbly, struggling to process his words. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Carter sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Mr. Archer is difficult to persuade. But don't lose hope. Sometimes things have a way of working out." I thanked him and left the building, the weight of failure heavy on my shoulders. I had done the right thing, but at what cost? My dream job was gone, and my future seemed uncertain. The city outside, which had seemed so full of promise just hours earlier, now felt cold and unwelcoming. I wandered aimlessly, my mind replaying the events of the morning. As I walked, I pulled out my phone and saw several missed calls and messages from my friends and family, all eager to hear about my first day. The thought of explaining my abrupt firing was too much to bear, so I put the phone back in my pocket and continued walking, the noise of the city blending into a background hum. After what felt like hours, I found myself in a small park, a quiet oasis amid the urban chaos. I sat on a bench, staring blankly at the ground, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. "Hey, are you okay?" A voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see a young man standing before me, concern etched on his face. "Yeah, just had a rough day," I replied, forcing a weak smile. He nodded, taking a seat next to me. "I get it. Sometimes life throws you a curveball when you least expect it. My name's Mike, by the way." "Ryan," I said, shaking his outstretched hand. "So, what happened?" Mike asked, genuinely curious. I took a deep breath and recounted the morning's events, from saving Emily to getting fired by Mr. Archer. Mike listened attentively, occasionally nodding or offering a sympathetic comment. "Man, that's tough," he said when I finished. "But you did the right thing. Not many people would have stepped up like you did." "Thanks," I said, appreciating his words more than I expected. "I just don't know what to do now." Mike leaned back, looking thoughtful. "Well, you never know how things will turn out. Sometimes the worst days can lead to the best opportunities. Just keep your head up and keep moving forward." His words resonated with me, and for the first time since leaving UNC or our group, I felt a glimmer of hope. We sat in companionable silence for a while, the sounds of the park soothing my frayed nerves. Eventually, I thanked Mike and headed home, his words echoing in my mind. Maybe, just maybe, things would work out after all. That night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Emily, the girl I had saved. "Thank you again for today, Ryan. I don't know what I would have done without you. My father wants to thank you personally. Can we meet tomorrow?" I stared at the message, a sense of disbelief mingling with curiosity. Maybe Mike was right. Maybe this unexpected detour was the start of something new. With a renewed sense of hope, I replied, "Sure. Let's meet tomorrow." The following day, I woke up with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Emily's message had sparked a faint hope in me, but the looming uncertainty of what her father wanted made my stomach churn. After a quick breakfast, I dressed in my best shirt and headed out to the address she had provided, a high-end restaurant downtown. The restaurant was a stark contrast to my modest life. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the polished marble floors gleamed underfoot. A matron in a crisp suit greeted me at the entrance. "Good morning, sir. How may I assist you?" he asked with a polite smile. "I'm here to meet Mr. Hunter and his daughter, Emily," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ah, yes, Mr. Summers. Right this way, please." He led me to a secluded table near a large window with a view of the city skyline. Emily and a distinguished older man, presumably her father, were already seated. Emily waved me over with a warm smile. "Ryan, I'm so glad you could make it," she said as I approached. "Thank you for inviting me," I replied, taking the seat opposite them. Mr. Hunter, a man with a commanding presence and kind eyes, extended his hand. "Ryan, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Paul Hunter. Emily has told me a lot about you." "It's an honor, Mr. Hunter," I said, shaking his hand. "Please call me Paul," he insisted, his tone friendly. We ordered our meals, and the conversation began with pleasantries. Emily recounted the events of the previous day to her father, who listened intently, his expression growing more serious as she described my dismissal from UMCOR Group. "Ryan," Paul began, leaning forward slightly, "I owe you a great debt of gratitude for what you did for my daughter. Your actions speak volumes about your character. It's unfortunate that UMCOR Group couldn't see that." I nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and frustration. "Thank you, sir. It was the right thing to do, but it cost me my job." "Indeed, it did," Paul agreed. "And that's why I'm here. I want to help you. You see, Northern Digital, my company, has a strong partnership with UMCOR Group. Your firing was not only unjust, but also a poor reflection on their management." Emily chimed in. "Dad has a lot of influence. He can talk to Mr. Archer and explain everything." More than that, Paul continued, "I want to offer you a position at Northern Digital. We value integrity and courage, qualities you have in abundance." I was stunned. "Mr. Hunter, Paul, that's incredibly generous. But what about my job at UMCOR Group? Shouldn't I try to get it back first?" Paul smiled knowingly. "I thought you might say that. I've already arranged a meeting with Mr. Archer for later today. I'll be accompanying you to ensure your story is heard." Relief washed over me, tempered by a renewed sense of determination. "Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it more than words can express." A few hours later, we were at UMCOR Group's headquarters. The reception area felt different this time, less intimidating, more familiar. Paul and I were ushered into Mr. Archer's office, where he sat behind his imposing desk, his expression guarded. "Mr. Hunter, Mr. Summers," Archer greeted us, his tone neutral. "To what do I owe this meeting?" Paul didn't waste any time. "Mr. Archer, I'm here to discuss Ryan Summers. His dismissal was a mistake, and I believe a grave injustice was done." Archer's eyes flickered with surprise, but he quickly masked it. "Mr. Hunter, with all due respect, Mr. Summers was late to this first day. We have strict policies. Policies are important, Mr. Archer." Paul interjected firmly, "But so is context. Ryan missed his orientation because he was saving my daughter from a dangerous situation. His actions should be commended, not punished." Archer's expression shifted from neutrality to defensiveness. "And how can you be certain of this story?" "Because my daughter confirmed it," Paul replied, his voice steel. "She was the one he saved." A tense silence filled the room. Archer glanced at me, then back at Paul, the realization slowly dawning on him. "I see," he said finally, his tone more subdued. "I was not aware of this connection." "You should have listened to him," Paul said, a warning edge to his voice. "Now I expect you to rectify this mistake." Archer hesitated, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. "Mr. Summers, I apologize for my earlier decision. You are welcome to return to UMCOR Group." I felt a surge of vindication, but also a sense of duty. "Thank you, Mr. Archer. But I need to know, why were you so quick to dismiss me?" Archer looked uncomfortable, his gaze shifting to Paul. "There are other factors at play. but let's just say I've been under a lot of pressure. Paul gave a knowing nod. I think it's time for a change in leadership. Ryan, will you consider staying with UMCOR Group under a new, more ethical management? I glanced at Paul, then at Archer, who looked increasingly uneasy. Yes, I will, I said finally, but only if we can create a better working environment. Agreed, Paul said. And Mr. Archer, I suggest you take some time to reflect on your actions. Archer stood, extending his hand to me. Welcome back, Ryan. I'll see to it that things change around here. As we left the office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Paul clapped me on the back. You did well, Ryan. I think you'll be a great asset to UMCOR Group. Thank you, Paul. I couldn't have done it without your support. Emily was waiting in the lobby, her face lighting up when she saw us. How did it go? She asked eagerly. Better than I expected, I replied with a smile. I'm back at UMCOR Group. That's amazing, she exclaimed, giving me a quick hug. And there's more, Paul added with a grin. Ryan's going to help turn things around at UMCOR Group. Emily beamed. I knew you could do it, Ryan. As we walked out of the building, I realized that this unexpected detour had led me to something greater than I had ever imagined. With Paul and Emily by my side, I felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future, once clouded by uncertainty, now seemed bright with possibility. The moral of the story is that doing the right thing, even when it comes at a personal cost, can lead to unforeseen and positive outcomes. Acts of bravery and integrity often open doors to new opportunities and can ultimately reveal the true character of those around us.